forgiveness. It's not an easy subject. It's not something that's easy to talk about. And it's not something that is easy to do. Many times we're hurt in life. Somebody wrongs us. Somebody does something against us. And we begin to feel bitter toward that person. We feel angry toward that individual. And before you know it, we're harboring those feelings of bitterness and resentment. And our human nature is to want to get back at the person, to get even. But that's not the kind of life that God instructs us to live. The Bible teaches us that we are to forgive those who have wronged us. Forgiveness was a subject that was on Simon Peter's mind as the disciples and Jesus were traveling along one day. And Peter looked at Jesus and he said, "Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother? Up to 7 times?" Now understand that what Peter was doing here was something that was very noble. Because Jewish law says that you only had to forgive a person 3 times. If they wronged you a 4th time, you no longer had to forgive them. So understand that Peter was going way above what the law expected. I'm sure that Peter felt that he would be commended for his attitude toward forgiveness. But Jesus said something shocking. He told Peter, no, not 7 times, but up to 70 times 7, or the NIV says 77 times. Now understand that Jesus was talking symbolically here. This is not literal. 77 or 7 times 70, that is a number, a multiple of 7, which is the number of perfection. And multiples of 10, which again speaks of the idea of perfection or endlessness. And that's what Jesus is saying here. Not that we are to forgive a person a set number of times, but that we are to forgive a person an unlimited number of times. Jesus goes on to tell a parable to illustrate this. He said there was a man who owed his master an insurmountable debt. In fact, the amount of this debt was more money than an individual would ever earn in a lifetime back in that day and time. It was unthinkable that someone would owe this much money. Well, it came time that the debt was due, and the master sent for his slave and called the debt in, and the slave fell down and began to beg his master, and he said, "I don't have the means to repay you. I can't repay you right now." And so the master had mercy on the slave, and he forgave him and sent him away. Well, what happens? That slave goes out. He finds an individual that owes him a much lesser amount of money. That individual is not able to repay him, so he takes and has him thrown in prison. You see, instead of forgiving like he had been forgiven, he took action. He retaliated against this person that owed him money. And at the end of this parable, Jesus says, "Should you not also have mercy on your fellow slave, even as I had mercy on you?" You see, the first master calls the slave back in. He said, "Why didn't you have mercy on the one who owed you money the way I had mercy on you?" He goes on to say, "And his Lord, moved with anger, handed him over to the torturers until he should repay all that was owed him. So shall my heavenly Father also do to you, if each of you does not forgive his brother from your heart." Here's the thing at the end of the Lord's Prayer in Matthew chapter 6, when Jesus taught his disciples to pray and he gave that great Lord's Prayer. At the end of that, he says, "If you forgive others, then my heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you don't forgive others, then my heavenly Father will not forgive you." You see, our forgiveness of others is to be unconditional. The reason being is because of what this parable illustrates. You see that first master that had the slave that owed him an insurmountable debt? That is a picture of us and God. We owed a debt of sin that we could never pay. There is no way we could ever pay the debt of sin, the wrong that we had done against God. But God willingly and lovingly and unconditionally forgave us. In the same way, we are to forgive others as they sin against us. You know, if you fail to forgive others, that bitterness, that unforgiving spirit can literally put you in a prison. There's a story of a little boy and a little girl who went to visit their grandparents. The little boy had just got a brand new slingshot and he couldn't wait to try it out, so he was outside in the backyard playing with this slingshot when all of a sudden his grandmother's pet duck walked by. And yeah, as you can guess, the little boy couldn't resist, so he takes the rock in that slingshot and he shoots it at that duck and hits the duck in the head, and the duck falls over dead. Well, fearful of what would happen, he takes and he hides the duck in the wood pile. And as he's going in the house, his little sister says, "You know, Johnny, I saw what you did." As they go into the house for lunch, after they finish eating, the grandmother says, "Sally, why don't you get up and help me with the dishes?" And Sally says, "Oh no." She says, "Johnny said that he wanted to help you with the dishes." You see, she was getting back at her brother. She was holding that over him. And so little Johnny got up and helped with the dishes. And then later on they sat down to eat dinner, and the grandfather asked the grandkids, he says, "Well, would y'all like to go fishing after we eat?" And the grandmother says, "Oh no," says, "I need Sally to stay here and help me." Sally says, "Oh no," says Grandma, "Johnny said that he wanted to do it." Again, holding that over her brother. And this went on for a few days. Finally, the little boy couldn't stand it anymore, and he went to his grandmother and he said, "Grandma, I've got to confess. I was playing with my slingshot and I killed your pet duck and I hid it in the woodpile." The grandmother looked at little Johnny and she said, "Honey," she said, "I know. I was looking out the window and I saw what happened. And because I love you, I forgave you. I was just wondering how long you were going to let Sally make a slave out of you." That's what unforgiveness does to us. It makes a slave out of us. Bitterness, resentment, and anger. Jesus said we are to forgive others just as He has forgiven us. Is there somebody you need to forgive? Is an unforgiving spirit eating away at you inside? You need to forgive that person. And I will tell you, the only way you can possibly do that is by the power of God. You have to ask God to help you. We're not capable in and of ourselves of being able to forgive someone. We can only do that by the power of God. So ask God to help you to forgive that person or that individual. And then seek out that person and reconcile that relationship and experience the freedom and the peace and the joy that forgiveness can bring in your life.